here with another episode of the Tushti Book Review. And this time we're looking at John Irving's A Prayer for Owen Meany. This book was published in 1989 and it was his 7th work. So two things before we get started. First, this video is going to be full of spoilers, just so you know. There's so much to discuss if you look at the whole book, and we didn't want to limit the conversation, so we are going to spoil a bit of it for you. The second thing is that we actually both listened to this as an audiobook, and we really recommend that because one of the main characters has a really interesting voice, and the reader that we heard on Audible just did an outstanding job. So I highly recommend that if you don't read the paperback book. We of course loved it so much, so we bought the book too.
So before we jump into our book review, let's just outline what we're going to be talking about. First, we'll be just talking about some characters. Then we're going to be talking about the two themes that just really encapsulate the book. And finally, we're going to rate the book by using our Tushti Rating Scale. And interwoven will also be some examples from the book that just really show why it got the ratings that it got, etc. First, we have the two main characters, Owen and Johnny. So Owen is a tiny person throughout his life. He also has a pretty unique voice and a very loud personality. So the thing with his voice is that his vocal cords either never really developed or they're screwed up because of the dust of the granite quarries that his family owns. In the written version of the book, John Irving conveys Owen's voice by writing in all caps. In the audible version, actually one of my favorite parts was that the reader was really awesome at making this Owen voice, and it was my favorite part. I would wait for it to happen. And actually, Megan makes a pretty sick impression of Owen.
It's okay. So there's this scene where they're all in Sunday school, and all the kids like to pass Owen above their heads while sitting in their chairs as a game, and Owen yells, "Ah! Put me down! You're messing up my baseball cards!"
So the other main character is Johnny Wheelwright. He is the narrator of the book and Owen's sidekick throughout. Johnny is a pretty boring person when isolated from everybody else. But the thing is, one, he is Owen's best friend and thus always there with Owen in everything, all the weird stuff and weird pranks that Owen makes. And also, Johnny has a pretty incredible family that just spice up the story so much, and Megan is going to talk to you about that.
Right, so Johnny's grandmother is the first character, Harriet. She's kind of ornery, kind of sarcastic. She starts out with this high view of literature and academia, but then once they get to television, she's obsessed with it and stops reading books. She also develops a kind of strange fondness for Owen. She kind of loves and hates him at the same time, and she becomes his benefactor and helps him through school, helps him buy clothes and tuition and all of that, and it's just really important in his life. And Johnny's, of course, as his grandmother. Then you have Johnny's mother, Tabitha. Although she dies early in the book, like she's only about 30 years old, the boys are about 11, I think, she has a very strong influence on them. Later, the boys start to investigate her life a little bit, and they try to find out who Johnny's father is, because that's something she's kind of kept to herself, even from her own mother and from her child. So later they go and try and find out who Johnny's dad is, and they find out she had this secret persona and she would sing in nightclubs basically and wear like scandalous red dresses. But aside from that life that they found out about her, she was home more than she was not, and she was very like a tender, warm, motherly influence on both Johnny and Owen. And when Johnny is very young, she actually marries a man named Dan Needham, who is Johnny's stepdad. But he also becomes a father figure for Owen as well. Both of Johnny's parents are really there for Owen, even though Owen has his own parents. It's just a very different type of relationship. And Dan, he has a Harvard background, he's very intelligent, he teaches theater at the Gravesend Academy where the boys later attend high school. And he's really good at giving advice to the boys whenever they have any problem or struggle or just need advice. And the last character I'll mention is Hester, who is Johnny's cousin. She's kind of a rough around the edges type of girl. She would bring in every New Year getting drunk and throwing up in the bushes, at least from high school on. So Hester and Owen actually end up dating later on. Even though Owen is kind of a weird and unique character, like the weird voice and, you know, he's very small, Hester doesn't care about that. She just loves him anyway. And at the same time, Owen and Johnny have kind of this unconditional love for Hester.
Now we're going to talk about the two main themes.
As John Irving himself said in an interview, a large premise of this book tries to answer the question of, what would I need to see to believe in a God? In this novel, Johnny is the skeptic that needs concrete proof to believe, and Owen's life is that proof. Throughout the book, Owen recognizes his own prophecy in pieces. Early on, he shows his faith by saying, "God has taken your mother. My hands were the instrument. God has taken my hands. I am God's instrument." There are a series of events where the rest of the pieces that seal his fate come into place. First, you have the incident with the baseball, where Owen accidentally kills Johnny's mother. His first hit ever, and he drives the ball straight into Tabitha's temple, killing her instantly. Owen copes with this accident by recognizing that God was using him as an instrument, and that Johnny's mother's death was fated. Owen expresses the sacrifice of his hands to God's power by removing the claws of Johnny's stuffed armadillo, emphasizing the taking of hands, which is repeated throughout the story. Then there is the play where Owen sees the exact date of his own death in the midst of his fever. Still later, he sees snippets of how and where he dies in a dream. All of these events culminate to the climax of Owen's death, and if everything suddenly makes sense under the notion that Owen was meant to save a group of Vietnamese children from a psychopath in an airport in Arizona. The shot that Johnny and Owen had practiced over and over again, Owen's height and voice like a child so that the children follow his directions, everything now makes sense to Owen and Johnny. By tying all of these events together, Owen fulfills his own prophecy, and John Irving ties together neatly many seemingly disparate elements into a forceful ending that would be more than enough evidence for any skeptic to believe in a higher power.
The second theme is complexity/richness. And this means that John Irving throughout the book goes into a lot of digressions that actually work as character building. Basically, when he is writing about like a time period, he jumps back and forth, tells you a new story. Like for example, Sagamore, Mr. Fish's dog. He gets run over by this diaper truck, and he just mentions that at the beginning of the story, but then like in the middle of the book, he actually explains how that happened and the funeral that ensued, everything. But it's like he just like throws a seed somewhere and then he actually fleshes it out later on randomly at a place. And the way that this works is that basically you start understanding Owen and Johnny way better by understanding their environment that they live in, right? Because you understand the people that live around them, the people that live in their communities, the teachers, the classmates, the two reverends. You start understanding the characters better because you understand the society that they live in, the community that they live in better.
So now time for our Tushti Rating System. So the first attribute that we rate on is writing style, and we give this one 5 out of 5 because while we kind of already described the character Johnny has an incredible wit when he's writing about his friend Owen Meany, really that's John Irving's wit shining through this whole book, and he does it in such a flawless way that, you know, we really just enjoyed that.
So the second variable in our Tushti grading scale is entertainment value, and this book was incredibly entertaining. I would actually go on really long walks in the middle of the winter. It was January here in Kansas, and I would go on 3-hour walks and not even feel the cold because it was so entertaining, and I just couldn't stop listening to this book. And even though it was a really long book for an audiobook, it just flew by for me. It was so great. That's why we give it a solid 5 out of 5.
We actually give it 4.5, but that's okay.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
No, it's fine. It's better the way you describe it to give it 5.
Just like all of it.
Yeah.
Just all 5. That's so sad.
I know. So the third thing we rate on is structure. And we've kind of already hinted about how he jumps around in time periods, and you know, he's able to do this because he leaves signposts. So for instance, a major event that you can tell if it's before or after based on the context of how he's writing. So for instance, Johnny's mom dies, and so if she is in the scene, obviously you know it's before that and you know the age of the characters. Or if he's talking about after she died, you can kind of tell from the context how long it's been since her death. And there are other major events in the book like that that he really uses as signposts. So for structure, we give it 5 out of 5.
So the next component is plot, and the whole book is plot driven. Actually, John Irving is a plot driven author in contrast to people like Stephen King, who are more like situational kind of authors. Like Stephen King would ask himself, what happens next, and just write about that. But John Irving starts the book knowing the ending and like writing the whole book surrounding this aspect, right? Like building the story to reach that ending and just making it all cohesive and great. For this reason, we just gave this book a 5 out of 5 in plot.
Actually, we give the whole book for the overall rating a 5 out of 5. We think everybody and their brother should read it. It's that good, and we think that you would really enjoy it. So, thanks for watching.